Guys, you get to grow your audience on LinkedIn in your sweatpants at home. Like, what
Literally.
other pitch do you need?
When I use the word algorithm around LinkedIn, it's not a dirty word.
That is so unlike any other platform I've ever heard about.
Why am I clicking on your profile? What are you actually providing? Being hyper conscious of the comments because it's shown on your profile.
Your comments are your content, basically.
If you are doing a series of looks great, exciting, exclamation point.
Oh man.
It's all on display.
I just have never been so excited to be able to grow a platform in my pajamas, and I don't have to necessarily post new created filming content or writing content in order to have it grow. Like, I feel like there's no better opportunity than that.
Have you ever seen those videos where it's like unsexy products that, work really well, or products yes, that's LinkedIn.
Are you somebody who has thought about using LinkedIn for your business? Or maybe you are right now and you really want to know how to leverage it to take it to the next level? If so, today is the episode for you, because we are joined by Sam Sloane and we are going to be talking all things LinkedIn. Today, we discuss how to really understand some of the misconceptions about LinkedIn as a platform and how you can leverage it for your business. We discuss the different ways and approaches that you can use to leverage LinkedIn's unique algorithm to actually help you and your marketing and business to scale. We talk about engagement strategies and how to grow your network on LinkedIn and your reach and impressions without necessarily having to create any content. We talk about, if you're creating content, how to tailor that content, maybe even repurposing of the content you have today to be successful on LinkedIn, building your personal brand on LinkedIn, and most importantly, how can you use LinkedIn as a business tool for yourself for both hiring as well as generating sales. There is literally not a better person to come on and to talk about this other than Sam. Sam Sloane is a serial entrepreneur, business strategist, and founder with a track record of scaling businesses across industries. With a background in economics and entrepreneurship, she has built, grown, and exited companies, worked in high growth corporate environments, and successfully pitched to top venture capital firms. Her journey began in the wellness industry, where she built and sold her first business. From there, she was recruited to Equinox Growth Team, working on expansion strategies before transitioning into financial and technical recruiting as an associate director. Seeing a critical gap in career literacy, she launched a career coaching business she later productized, helping professionals navigate today's complex job market. Now, Sam is leveraging her experience to build a tech product in the sports data space while running a business consulting firm that helps entrepreneurs and executives scale with precision. Her consulting work focuses on sales, marketing, operational strategy, and helping businesses remove bottlenecks, optimize revenue, and scale sustainably. She's been in the trenches, building, scaling, exiting businesses firsthand. With real world experience across industries, Sam understands what it takes to turn high touch, founder dependent businesses into scalable, profitable companies. Through her consulting firm, she has helped business owners to move from working inside their business to building something that runs without them so they can grow with clarity, confidence, and control. And in all of this, she has leveraged LinkedIn as an incredible asset and tool for the way that she's been able to do that. And so she is going to be going over a masterclass on all things LinkedIn today. So without further ado, let's get into today's episode. All right, you guys. Well, welcome back to Ambitious. I'm really excited for today's episode because we are having a conversation that at least I feel like I don't see enough on social media or on podcasts. I feel like everybody gives TikTok all of the airtime. Everyone gives Instagram the airtime. And today we are talking all things LinkedIn. As you heard in the intro, today I am joined by the incredible Samantha Sloane. I am so excited to pick your brain because I feel like, I was just saying this, guys, before we started recording, it's always when you hear from someone who's an expert in a certain platform, they usually only market on that platform. So if you're talking to someone who's like, I love TikTok, they only market on TikTok, or I love Instagram, they only market on Instagram. But the reason I'm excited for today is because like you have literally basically done it all. Like, you've done the podcast, TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn. And obviously today we're hyper focused on LinkedIn, but I think that that's really important because it shows to me that like you really have tried everything. You're not just saying I love LinkedIn because it's the only place that I market.
Right.
It's really that you've tried everything. So for anyone who might be, kind of new to you or to your brand, give them maybe like a little bit of a 101 of kind of you and your business and kind of how you got to where you are today.
Yeah. Well, I'm so excited to chat with you about this and like nerd out on all things, because Here's the thing with LinkedIn is it's so easy to nerd out on, and it's actually so incredibly different than any other platform.
Yeah.
And I actually think LinkedIn needs a new marketer. Like maybe that's you, maybe that's me, but I actually think it needs a whole rebrand. And so I started using LinkedIn, oh my gosh, 10 plus years ago, and it has evolved massively during that
Huge.
time. I used it to build a business in, 2013, 2014, 15. I then used it for my corporate career, and I use it now in the business that I have, and I actually teach people how to use it every day in both the element of business as well as, kind of up-leveling their careers and building their personal brand, which they actually go hand in hand.
Hand in hand.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's why for me, like, I feel like LinkedIn used to be known as like, I don't know how else to label it, but like it wasn't a cool platform to be on. It was considered to be like this business, very formal. It was like if you had the most formal version of yourself, that's what was being posted on LinkedIn. And I think
Yes.
to your point, it wasn't really, in my opinion, even really seen as like a social platform, even though obviously it has been this entire time.
Right.
The way that people were using it was not in the social way. And I feel like now, obviously it's changed so much. So like for you, obviously you've been on it for a long time. What are kind of the different changes that you've seen to kind of bring it to where it is today?
Yeah, definitely. So I don't know if you remember that meme from a couple years ago where you'd have like your Instagram photo, your Twitter photo, and
Yeah.
your LinkedIn photo, and they were all completely different. So
Yeah.
yeah, it kind of has this facade, but it actually is one of the most high growth platforms that exists because of the way the algorithm works. So
Mm.
obviously, I know we love to not be bound by algorithms and we love to go based off marketing principles,
Yeah.
which of course stands true. But this is one case where the algorithm actually really works in one's favor. So for anyone
Mm.
who's new to LinkedIn or has dabbled but doesn't know how to really fully dive in, the algorithm is actually really working in your favor. And that's some of the main changes that has happened. It really used to be a virtual resume.
Mm.
People would use that in whatever way that they need it. That could be business, that could be marketing, that could be sales prospecting. And now it has become a full-fledged social media platform. So I think what makes LinkedIn so unique is that you can both research and execute
Okay.
all in one place, which is incredibly powerful and something that you can't do on any other platform that exists right now.
And like when you say research, what do you mean by that?
Yeah. So if you're a marketer, if you are sales prospecting, if you're building your business, whether you're a solopreneur or you have a team, LinkedIn enables you to get in and get granular and find who are these decision makers? Who do I need to get in contact with? What are their connections? And you can then take all that information and execute. Whereas if we look at a platform run by Meta or ByteDance or any of those, even some of the subsequent ones that have come out, it's all execution based. And
Mm.
so this combination, in my opinion and in my experience, is incredibly powerful.
Mm. Well, like even you saying about the algorithm, like I would be curious about that because obviously for me, like, and I know we always have these conversations off the podcast about all this stuff, but
Yeah,
I nerd out on the algorithms because for me it was interesting obviously when TikTok came around because with Instagram, Instagram was very much based off of like you build this follower base and then those are the people who get seen who basically get presented your content. And then we had
right,
TikTok, which kind of threw the whole thing on its head,
right.
which said, listen, you can have no following, you can have no commitment, and we're going to push your content out completely based on interest. Obviously, you market on TikTok and Instagram. When it comes to like the LinkedIn algorithm, how does that kind of work in comparison to the other two? Or does it kind of fall similar to one of them?
Yeah, so it really stands alone. So the LinkedIn algorithm at its core can be really looked at in three main buckets of how they make revenue, right? And so on a ByteDance, on a TikTok, on a Meta, any of the subsequent platforms, threads, it's all about keeping someone on the platform, right? That is the
Mm.
goal of the company. How long can we keep someone there? And so on a micro level, that means that each creator needs to create content that keeps someone scrolling or reading a caption. And that's why we dive into these really hyper tactical things,
Yeah.
right? A hook or a background or XYZ. Whereas with LinkedIn, you actually have the ability to pop into other people's audiences. And so
Mm.
if you were to, let's say, comment, if you were to make your own piece of content, which kind of builds the facet of depending on your comfort level, right?
Yeah.
Maybe you're commenting.
Yeah.
And if you want to go all in, maybe you're making your own content. But if someone, let's say you make a piece of content, I then like it, that like now gets shared with my entire audience.
Okay.
So you have the ability to basically tap into people's audiences in a way that does not happen on any other platform whatsoever.
Got it. So just simply by even if you weren't creating any content on LinkedIn, but just even going and engaging with people's things on LinkedIn, that alone would have the ability to grow your community.
That's right.
Wow.
That's
Okay.
right. I
Okay.
have a whole it's very micro, but a full commenting strategy
Okay.
because a lot of people are not comfortable, especially if it's associated with, a brand. Maybe you're not comfortable putting that first piece of content out there, but because you're used to
Mm,
Instagram or you're used to TikTok, and
yep.
now it's more written, or now it's, people you haven't talked to in a while.
Right.
So this is a great way to build that and still be able to tap into other people's audiences.
And like for something like that, that is like obviously you guys hear me talk on episodes about like the principles versus the tactic. And obviously like
Yeah.
commenting it would be like one of those tactics, the principle being engaging.
Right.
How much time are we talking about? Because I remember like back in the OG Instagram days, it would be like you spend an hour in the morning engaging or like 30 minutes before the post, 30 minutes after the post. Like
Right.
if someone is wanting to dabble in LinkedIn, how much time would you dedicate to something like that to kind of see momentum with it?
Yeah, I would say probably anywhere between a half hour to 45 minutes per
Okay.
day because it's
Okay.
also about finding the people whose audiences you actually want to tap into,
Mm, okay. So being
right?
really intentional with those that you're engaging with to ensure that their audiences are the audience you want to discover you.
That's right.
Got it.
And everyone is on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is
True.
the level playing field. You can find CEOs, you can find investors, you can find angel investors, you can find everyone on LinkedIn.
Mm,
And instead of jumping straight into their DMs, which can feel really uncomfortable for both you and them,
yep.
you can comment, you can start to engage with their content in a really thoughtful way. And of course, that's a prerequisite. It has to be thoughtful, right? It can't be a
Mm.
great post, love this. Um,
Which, by the way, just as a PSA, should not be happening on any platform. If that's your
exactly.
engagement strategy, we need a new approach.
Exactly.
That should just not be happening anywhere.
Yep. No,
Okay,
sure.
so obviously we're talking about the people that are on LinkedIn, and everybody's on LinkedIn. And
That's right.
so I think a natural curiosity that people have is like B2B businesses like yourself. Obviously, you have, different legs to your business. For myself, obviously working B2B, what if someone's B2C? Because I think obviously most people being B2B businesses are like, great, LinkedIn is a place that you can absolutely leverage. But what if someone's trying to go direct to consumer? Do you think that there is a opportunity there for them, or are they better off to put their energy somewhere else?
So I actually think direct to consumer is better than B2B. So I touched on this earlier, but LinkedIn has three different revenue streams. You have LinkedIn Recruiter, which is specifically for hiring. And that could be, a couple $1,000s per recruiter per month, right? That's a
Mhm.
massive revenue generator. You then have Sales Navigator, which is B2B or B2C, which gets you access to all sorts of analytics behind a potential customer. And then you have ads, right? And so those
Mm.
are the main three ways that LinkedIn makes money. So through personal branding, you are able to get directly in front of consumers, right? Because when someone is using LinkedIn, they are in a different mindset than when they
Yeah.
are on Instagram or when they're doing their, doom scroll on TikTok at night and saving videos and sharing it with friends. They're in a completely different mindset. And I
Right.
think that's really important to touch into and to also humanize a brand, which you can do really easily with direct to consumer.
Right. And I mentioned that because I think that the number one thing I hear in general with social media is like my ideal client's not there.
Yeah.
And like people say that about all different platforms, right? Some people say that about Instagram, some about TikTok. But I think the important thing that I just want to highlight of what you said is like people use it differently. I think people are on all these social media platforms, but it's really just the actual mindset or the psychology or the behavior you have when you're on one platform versus the other. Like you're saying, scrolling TikTok at night, not going to happen with LinkedIn. So it's also, I think, when for a marketer or a business, when you're going in to leverage that platform, going in with the kind of pre expectation of how the consumer is consuming it
Yeah.
because the expectation of how something performs on TikTok is not obviously going to be the same as what's going to happen on LinkedIn. And I'm curious because, obviously you've used all these platforms. for somebody who's like, okay, I feel like I have to be everywhere. Like I'm supposed to be on Instagram, I'm supposed to be on TikTok, I'm supposed to be, potentially now on LinkedIn, and it's really leverageable for me.
Yeah.
With your business and obviously all the, brand community that you've built, and you've built a big brand on all these different platforms, how do you kind of leverage these platforms and kind of decide what you put where or how you behave in certain places?
Yeah, okay, I think that's such a great question because we are told to be everywhere, all in one place,
Mhm.
and it can feel extremely spread thin. And going back to what we talked about, the consumer behavior is different on LinkedIn. So the content, it cannot be the same. It can be a variation. It can be a variation of a theme or a marketing pillar, but it cannot be
Mm.
the same. And in a way, we do have to kind of put some baits out in the water and test. But, when I'm using LinkedIn, I'm really thinking about this is not just a brand, this is me, and people know that, and a lot of people know me in real life from
Mhm.
LinkedIn as well.
Yeah.
And I will say that I do believe from a psychological standpoint that LinkedIn elicits a different behavior because it is someone's full name, someone's work background,
Mm.
someone's business. It's not the same behavior as for sure on TikTok, and
Yeah, like you're
absolutely
not hiding behind a handle.
you're
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
No. Which allows you when you build connection, it's genuine connection.
Mm.
It
True.
isn't liking for the sake of coming and like it, someone liking something on your page,
Yeah.
right? You're able to actually storytell, you're able to actually connect and build that personal brand, which
Mm.
is huge.
Yeah.
And engage with others in a really thoughtful way.
Yeah. Because I think obviously you're spot on. Like with TikTok, you can post something and you've got half the world who you've never met before and you have no idea who they are
Yeah,
liking and engaging
exactly.
with your content,
Yeah,
right? So it's very much obviously a visibility play, but there's no human element to it really because you've got so many users who don't even have an icon, let alone, have any personal name connected to anything.
that's right.
And then you've got Instagram, which I think is probably like the next tier of personalization. It's a little bit more about the person, but again, that's also assuming you are a personal brand, still very much can hide behind a handle.
That's right.
But you're spot on in the sense of like your LinkedIn is really the most personal, professional snapshot of any platform that you're ever going to showcase yourself on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Okay.
it gives you so many ways to connect with someone, right? Because you
Yeah.
can quite literally look at their background, you can look at their location, you can look at their education, and you can
Mm,
use that as a way to connect with them in a way that no other platform allows you to.
true. Well, none of that information is available. The only thing that you can use as the basis to know something about someone is their content, which half the
Yeah.
time isn't real anyway.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I
And so
think
like,
people
okay,
value it more for that reason because it is real.
yeah, well, I think as you said to the thing that keeps coming through for me is like resume. And
Yeah.
I think if you're a business and you're wanting to showcase like a lot of businesses obviously say like I want to showcase my authority. And
Yeah.
I would say of any platform to be able to showcase that, LinkedIn would be the way to do it because it really is, to your point, showcasing all of your highlight reel in an intentional way, in a structured way that's built into the way the platform operates, right?
Well, absolutely.
But I feel like that's only possible if someone actually knows how to optimize what their profile says.
For sure.
And as someone, I will admit, guys, like I'm not, which is why Sam is here. I am not talking from a high horse. I am not somebody who leverages LinkedIn deeply for their business.
Yeah.
But I will say, like, one of the first things I remember when I started my business was that I optimized the profile. Even if I'm not going to use the platform, I was like, I can't have the profile be something people land on.
Yeah.
That's just an instant downer when they discover me. And so I was like, it's one of the first things I had to fix. I was like, I can't have people requesting connections and then finding this profile that's blank. No way.
Right.
So profile there, obviously, as you said, this is a really good opportunity for us to showcase skill set,
Mhm.
expertise,
Yes.
authority. I feel like many of us know how to whip up an Instagram bio. When it comes to building out a LinkedIn profile, I would say for most people, it feels probably pretty foreign. Where does someone even start to optimize their LinkedIn page?
Yeah, okay.
And
So
I
this
know you have a resource on this, by the way. So I wanted to also give shout out if people need to deep dive into this. I'm pretty
yeah,
sure you have a resource on this.
I do, absolutely, yes, and I'm happy to help anyone, because this is a theme throughout today's podcast, right? Is it's so incredibly different than if someone is coming from any other social media platform, it's going to feel foreign. And
Mm,
it's going to feel a little bit raw, if we're being honest, because it is not curated. It is your background. That's
mhm.
what it is, right? And some people say, yay, that's fantastic. I can't wait. And some people say, ooh, I don't love that. And that's just the fact of the matter. But in terms of, and this is where I, really nerd out, but in terms of profile optimization, again, we want to go back to think about how does LinkedIn operate, right? And the reason I'm harping a little bit on the algorithm is because the algorithm really doesn't change the way that Meta or ByteDance's algorithm is changing consistently.
Mm.
So when I use the word algorithm around LinkedIn, it's not a dirty word, right? It is, it's actually a really empowering thing. So
I love that, because on every other platform, when we hear the word algorithm, we're like, if there's another update, I'm out of here. I'm done.
exactly, yeah,
So
we
that's
just
actually very, very, very nice to hear.
yes, yeah, no, exactly. It's pretty tried and true. And so one of the main things to think about is there are so many people on LinkedIn, and a lot of people, and I don't have the stat on this, of course, but only use it when they need something. So they only use it when they need a job or they need to find an alumni or they're, sales prospecting. And so what happens is there's a lot of people who may fit a certain criteria, right? Let's say you're a business owner and you're looking to connect with other people.
Mm-hmm.
But the main issue there is that person may not be active. And there's no way to know that if they're active or not. And so one of the main components of LinkedIn's algorithm is your activity. And how do they
Okay.
find out what that is, right? It's not just about logging in, but it's also about what are you doing. So if you, for example, are updating anything around your profile, it could be your picture, it could be your background, it could be creating content, it could be commenting, it could be editing components of your profile. All of that is going to instantly tell their algorithm, yes, this person is actually active. And yes, I should filter
Mm,
them to the appropriate people.
got it.
So that's one really important thing to think about. In other words, it's not a set it and forget it type of thing,
Mm,
right? And then two, we think about when someone's searching, there's a little square that pops up that basically has your profile picture, your name, and your headline. So the profile picture, the name, and the headline is going to be your three key components. If you do nothing, do those three things.
mm,
So the headline itself, really, the profile picture, obviously, whatever feels most comfortable to someone is what they should do. It should only be the person in the no family photos, no like group photos here, but just, that person. Typically chest up is great because you can actually see someone's face, especially when you're searching. But with
mm-hmm.
the headline, right, we typically want to go three main things. It's what is your unique value proposition? What do you do really well that someone else can't do or doesn't do? Ideally, what industry are you in if that's relevant? And then, you can share something that's, a key accomplishment about yourself. And that key accomplishment can rotate, of course, over time.
Mm. I think the thing that's coming through for me is you only get as much out of it as you put into it,
Oh, 100%.
which is
100%.
for most people not what they want to hear, right?
Yeah.
Which is like the classic thing of like if you think about getting fit, like you only get as fit as much as you go to the gym. So
Yeah.
I think it's one of those. I think one of the beliefs, and obviously you know this, with we talk about content and stuff all the time.
Yeah.
With content, so many people want to set it and forget it.
They
And
do.
I think what LinkedIn, based off what you're saying, is kind of asking of people is this idea of like just mass repurposing or just like copy paste basically of content and like just literally have it scheduled to go out and you have nothing to do with anything.
Yeah.
Really, while content's going out and it will show you have things going out, really the basis of true success is going to come from connection and honestly pouring into LinkedIn. The
Yeah.
more you do so, the more you get out of it.
100%.
Got it.
100%. And it gives back tenfold, truly, because again, the insights that you gain around an individual is beyond compare. And
Mm,
and you're building true contacts, not just followers.
got it. Okay. Now, obviously, my natural inclination is to say, because you've literally, I want to say at this point, you've audited hundreds of LinkedIn's.
Oh my gosh.
So
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
least,
Oh yeah.
at this point, at least. And
I know.
so obviously, you've seen it all. What are
Yeah.
the mistakes you see when you land on someone's page? Like, her face lights up. She's like, okay, how long do I have?
It's great.
I'm wondering, like, if you're, because obviously, with your background,
Yeah.
in looking literally at so many LinkedIn's to be able to assess individuals for hire for all these different reasons, you've seen a lot. And so if you're looking at a LinkedIn page, what are you seeing that you're like, no, this either doesn't give me what I need, or it's just like to you, like a red flag, if you will, or a mistake that you really think people need to be aware of so that they maybe don't make that same mistake or aren't right now?
Yes. Okay. I love this question. because it's not just about pulling apart someone's profile, but it's actually about saying, hey, that XYZ behavior is actually stunting what I know you want to do. So, to
Mm,
answer this question, I'm going to break it up into three main components, right? The first is going to be the headline, because that's how you're going to show up when someone first searches you. And like I said, the name, the picture, the headline. And so, with the headline, people tend to lean into self descriptors, self labeling.
mm.
And so, when you self label and there is no context, I move on. Anyone moves
Okay.
on, right? We don't
What
know.
would be an example of self-labeling for someone listening?
Yeah. So it could be like all-star team leader. It could be like,
Okay.
like, obviously, but you see things like this on LinkedIn. That's a
Yeah.
little bit cheeky, right? But it could be something like any sort of soft skill,
Mm,
right? If you have a soft skill in your headline, remove it. Because we need to understand, if you're a business owner, what are you actually providing?
mm.
What are you actually giving to someone? Why am I clicking on your profile? So if we have a bunch of adjectives, if we have a bunch of soft skills in a profile, really what that does is dilute the core skill that someone has,
Got it. Got it.
right? So
Okay.
if you have, let's say, business makeover, and then you have your location, and then you have data driven, and then you have an, right? I have no idea what that does.
Right.
And I think that's really what we want to know is, as the consumer, what do you do? What do
Mm,
you truly do? Right? Not self-starter, not driven. What do you do?
right.
And it feels counterintuitive because we think, well, I want to stand out and there's so many other businesses and how do I stand out? But again, without context.
Mm.
No, no.
So you have to be able to pull an aspect of a conclusion from the headline, in your opinion, alone before continuing.
Oh, for sure. I should
Okay.
know exactly what I get, right? The LinkedIn process of finding someone, clicking on their profile, scrolling through their profile is almost identical to a sales page. So I need
Mm,
to understand, what is it that I'm getting into and why am I continuing to scroll,
got it. Got it.
right? So that would be core component number one. Number two would, of course, be your background, right? So if you either don't have your background filled out, if it's chronological on LinkedIn, so if that's not filled out, if there's huge gaps, of course, someone's going to wonder what happened, and
Mm,
who is this person really, and do they really care, and is this just a passive profile, right? Which may cause someone to not interact with you because they
right.
think, well, it's not even active anyway. And then the final, and this is really interesting, is being hyper conscious of the comments or any sort of engagement that you make because it's shown on your profile, which again is unlike any other platform.
Mm.
So if you are doing a series of looks great, exciting, exclamation point,
Oh, man.
it's
Yeah.
all on display, right?
I'm just thinking about those people. Obviously, you guys know these people do this on social media.
Oh, yeah.
Love this. Totally. So resonate. Love this. Imagine all of that showing in a feed list format on your own profile.
It's a
Okay.
wall of shame. It really.
Yeah. Okay.
Um,
Okay.
so that, and honestly, I've also seen people commiserate on LinkedIn. And again,
Okay.
that goes on that little section of your profile.
Mm,
So you can use that to your advantage and say, actually, if someone lands on my profile, if I'm leaving genuinely thoughtful comments and little micro pieces of thought leadership, great. I'm now able to sell myself without actually posting content.
okay.
So those are the three core buckets, I'd say.
So really, which is kind of exciting for anyone listening, in my opinion at least, because I feel like any social platform that we hear about, we're like, immediately you got to start posting like yesterday. And you're
Yes,
like,
I know.
great. But really, what you're saying is, even if someone's like, I'm not super sold that I want to start putting content out on LinkedIn yet,
Yeah.
you feel like even with removing the aspect of content, just with the engagement alone, there's a good potential of growth with that.
Oh, 100%.
Okay.
Sometimes even better. Sometimes even better than posting your own content, especially if you're not 100% sold or comfortable with
Yeah.
it. I think commenting can actually be better because it's twofold, right? On one hand, it goes on your own profile, these little micro
Right.
pieces of thought leadership. On the other hand, if I comment on your post, that now gets blasted out to your audience and someone else's audience, whoever, maybe likes that or engages with it.
Right.
Before you know it, I'm all over and I didn't post one thing.
That is so unlike any other platform I've ever heard about.
And it's
Like,
really
that's
cool.
just not something That's no feature that I've heard of. And like I nerd out on this stuff. It is
Yeah.
not something I've heard of with any platform. So it's really, guys, you get to grow your audience on LinkedIn in your sweatpants at home. Like, what
Literally.
other pitch do you need? What other sell do you need?
I know.
Okay.
It's really
But
great.
let's talk about those like yourself who are like, I am committed. If I feel like
Yeah.
this platform's going to do something for me, and obviously we saw a little, there was the initial surge of people who did this on TikTok. They just went ham and started posting content. And then there was a slow burn afterwards of people who were like, oh, this really is going to do something. Now I'll make content.
Yeah.
So if someone's listening and they're thinking, okay, I obviously there's an opportunity here with LinkedIn. Maybe I should consider putting content out on it. Where do we even start with the content side? Because as you said, every platform has every single different thing. And I
Mhm.
hear a lot of, in my opinion, misconceptions, which is like, LinkedIn is only articles, it's tons of writing,
Mhm.
and this belief that the video content that someone might be doing somewhere else won't have any place on LinkedIn, which I've recently learned is actually completely the opposite in the sense
Yeah.
of, insane engagement around video. So for
Yeah.
someone who might be like, okay, I've decided I'm making content on LinkedIn. Where the heck do they start? What do they need to know when it comes to content on LinkedIn as a social outlet for their marketing?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Okay, so in terms of an overarching theme, I would say any type of teasing content doesn't do well. So what typically performs on Instagram does not perform well at all on LinkedIn because again, people are going there for answers, to learn, to connect. And so anything that's a little too teasy is not going to work, right?
Mm,
And that's really just an overarching theme. But what's similar is to TikTok, the level of information that you can get from a post and direct honesty. The form
mm.
may just be a little bit different. So you can post written, right? So article form. You can do a carousel. If you do a carousel, it actually has to be posted in a PDF, which is a funny little niche, right? You have
Okay.
to shift it to a PDF video. And then what a lot of people do is text with a picture, which is going to
Okay.
perform a lot better than solo text. And
Okay.
so, yeah, how specific should I get here? Because I can go super.
Oh, girl, give me the handbook, whatever you got. Because I
Okay.
feel like the number one thing, at least I feel, is when someone's like, "Yeah, you gotta post reels." You're like, "What kind of reel? Talking reel?
Yeah.
B-roll reel? Like whatever you got, girl. I'm here for it."
Yeah, cool. So I'll start with the written, right? Because I think people find that to be in some way really easy, especially for storytelling. So what's cool about LinkedIn is basically you have 3 lines of space before the preview ends. And so what performs quite well, I find, is you have a hook, you have a space, and then you have like a sub hook. And then you go into the copy, or you go into the PDF that you update it, or you go into the video. But either way, those 3 lines are really, really crucial.
Mm.
And so that's on a very granular tactical level. I would say, of course, video is performing really, really well, but I wouldn't just copy anything from TikTok, although it's so tempting to do that. And I see people do it all the time.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
just it just doesn't perform the same way because any like is public. Any like is
Mm.
going to say Samantha Sloane liked blank and it's going to get pushed out to other people. So if someone is saying something a little too spicy,
Mm.
typically that's not going to get the same level of engagement.
Which is interesting because on something like, say, like a TikTok, the
Yeah.
more agitating, aggressive, sometimes like direct you are
Yeah.
in messaging, the better it performs. So you would actually say less aggressive or agitational type media on LinkedIn actually sometimes can be better.
Yeah. For sure.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. It's really about giving, giving, giving information. And that doesn't mean hyper education, but it does mean when someone walks away, they need to be better off.
Mm.
Right.
Okay.
Because to our point earlier, it's not about your followers, it's about the first 2 hours of engagement. And so those
Got
2
it.
hours are really, really crucial. So if you have a series of people who are saying, I really didn't get anything from that, it's not going to be pushed out.
Okay. So on the note of time then, does that also mean in turn that post time does matter?
It does. Oh,
Okay.
post matters for sure
Okay. Because I feel like
because
you hear a lot of that on platforms of like,
you do.
the post time doesn't matter. And then you're like, does it matter? Does it not matter? But obviously, if we're looking at engagement in the first 2 hours, getting something scheduled out at midnight and putting it out so you get something up is probably not the approach you're going to want to take with LinkedIn.
No, no, because those first 2 hours are going to be, no matter how great the content is, those first 2 hours are probably gonna be
Got it.
quiet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so I want to take a quick little brief interruption from today's episode to let you know about something really exciting. And I want to first preface there is nothing here that I have to sell you. This is about something that is entirely free that I think would be a massive support for you if you are someone who's loving all things ambitious podcast. So, we have created an absolutely incredible community that is called the Ambitious Network. This is really a place where coaching and masterminds meet high level networking of other women who are just like you. So, a little bit of what you can anticipate, this is a place for you to grow, to connect, and ultimately to get the support that you need to elevate your business. And so, some of the things you can anticipate inside, number one, live hot seat coaching. This is literally live coaching in the way that I would do inside of our masterminds and our different offers, only inside of this community, entirely free. You'll also get the opportunity to get access to exclusive giveaways that are not available anywhere else. So, these are things like giveaways of different books and resources that I'm obsessed with that have really helped me in my journey of business, but also things on a larger scale, like some of which have been 6 months of private coaching type of giveaways. So, all of this to be said, massive, massive amount of resources being given inside, and also trainings and resources, tools of frameworks and downloads and worksheets and masterclasses that are going to be things that will really help to take you and your business to the next level. Now, it's also not just about me. I have an incredible network and a community of other entrepreneurs who also want to give back to you if you've loved their interviews and their discussions on the Ambitious podcast. So, we have guests that are also providing resources in the community that will only be available inside the Ambitious Network. But there's also the networking aspect. And this is a place for you to not only connect with other women about what's going on in your business, what's currently working or not working in today's current market. It's a place to share wins, but it's also a place to connect with me and get my feedback and support for you and your business. Now, all of that to be said, this is as I said, mastermind meets networking. And I really have created this as a community that I want to be something you've never gotten anywhere else. It's not this low ticket membership that you feel like you're paying for, this graveyard of resources that the person has, they don't know what to do with. And it's also not that Facebook group that you're inside of that you feel like you get tons of notifications, but you don't really want anything that's inside of it. It all feels surface level. We want to give you the ability to have mastermind meets high level networking all in one place. And the Ambitious Network is where you're going to find that. So, how you can get inside. If you want to go to the show notes beneath, you can click a link to join us inside the Ambitious Network. And if you also want to connect with me on Instagram, I'm also happy to chat with you about it. So, if you DM me the word ambitious, we'll be sure to chat a little bit more about the network for you and give you the link to get inside. So, all of that to be said, I don't want to take any more time away from today's episode. So, without further ado, let's get back into the show. Question on video. The video of obviously you help people all the time to build personal brands.
Yeah.
And with personal brands, one of the big things that everyone wonders is like, how much do I post that's personal?
Yeah.
Where does the personal and personal brand have a place on LinkedIn? Because obviously we're talking about there's an aspect of entertainment, there's an aspect of education, giving people insight and wisdom, making them feel like they walked away with value from your content.
Yeah.
But kind of to your point where like it doesn't have to be all education though, do you feel like there's an aspect of like the personal brand lens that performs well on LinkedIn or has a place?
Yes, 100%. It has a really strong place. And I actually think it has a place that most people would feel comfortable with more than on other platforms. Because on other platforms, you may feel pressure if you're building a personal brand to post about your weekends or post about your
Yeah.
relationship or tag people in it. And maybe you're thinking, I'm not sure if I want to share that, but I do want people to know me as the business owner. I do want people to understand who I am as a professional, as a woman, etc. And so on LinkedIn, what you can do is really lean into storytelling. So
Mm,
this could be storytelling about growth, about achievements, about life lessons, hard lessons, rapid fire, kind of things that you've learned in a way that lets someone know you deeply,
mm,
which I think resonates more. I think a lot of people are tired of the hyper curated
mm.
posts, hyper curated weekends, hyper curated morning routine. Here's my agenda for the day. And that has no place on LinkedIn, which I am a fan of.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think also in regards to personal brand, I think that there's a misconception, generally speaking, around personal brand that people think being a personal brand means you share every aspect and every moment of your personal life.
That's right.
And I think one of the most impactful things that I've seen in regards to personal brand is the fact that it's really personal insight. Like, for example, if
Yes.
you went to a event over the weekend and some personal download that you had or personal experience or interaction that you had can be just as much personal content as a day in the life vlog could be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think more so because I'm now understanding your thought process, your beliefs. What do you stand for? What don't you stand for? When I have certain experiences, I may start to associate it with that person.
Mhm.
Whereas I don't remember anyone who posts their agenda or a quick snapshot, of a martini and a Caesar salad. Although
Yeah.
love it, I do it, but
Yeah.
I'm not going to post it, right? Because
Yeah.
that's not really adding any value to anyone.
Right.
And people wonder sometimes why a personal brand is stagnant, and that's typically why. There's
Well,
no
in a way, when you think about it, LinkedIn is actually then, in saying that, one of the easiest places to build personal brand because you're not having to fill. Like, obviously, a lot of us have entertainment value on something like an Instagram or a TikTok, right? If
yeah,
it's all education, we kind of feel like it's stale. We're like, okay, like,
yeah,
where's the personal? We want that day in the life or we want that behind the scenes.
yeah,
But I think to your point, when you give insight and wisdom around something and your perspective, and I want to just hit on something that Sam said there because you guys have heard me talk in episodes about building brand. And one of
yeah,
the things that she's sharing there is like why she believes it to be true or what her belief around something is. That's also building belief systems of the people who consume it. So, like, just sharing a vlog, and again, it's not to say that there's anything wrong with that style of content, but what this means is that every personal ish post that you put on LinkedIn really does also have brand building built into that as
yeah.
part of it.
It
Yeah.
does. It
Okay.
does. And it does in a way that the majority of people are not doing. So there's a huge opportunity gap for someone to step in and actually build
Mm.
that connection. True connection,
Yeah.
right? Because I love
I feel
watching.
like I hear that all the time. Like, I
Yeah,
feel like I hear from every single mastermind, every peer. They're
yeah,
like, there's so much open market that can be taken on
yeah,
LinkedIn when it comes to someone who's a really, like you said, like, we really need a brand to set the stage on LinkedIn.
yeah.
There's so much opportunity to post content. There's so much opportunity to really set like a different narrative when it comes to marketing there. Just in your personal perspective, why do you think someone hasn't taken that? Like, why do you think that people, even though they know, like the one of what we know about Instagram or TikTok, there's
Yeah,
X amount of content, there's X amount of consumers.
right.
The amount of creators or businesses on LinkedIn that are making all of these styles of marketing is very low. But yet, there's so many people who are consuming. So, in your opinion, why do you think businesses are resistant? Or maybe if someone like even listening to this is like, I've heard so many times, gotta go on LinkedIn, should be on LinkedIn, but like they're not. What do you perceive to be the disconnect versus the other platforms?
Oh my gosh, what a great question. I think it goes back to what we said before that I think LinkedIn needs a new marketer. Sorry,
Mm.
whoever the marketing person is,
Yeah.
but they do, right? So, ready for this? It was, let's say, 2017. I was in my corporate role at that time, and I had gone to LinkedIn, which is in the
Mm.
Empire State Building, and I had gone to a training there. And I got invited to a training there. And even though I use LinkedIn every single day in my role and had used it to build a business prior, I walked away thinking something completely different and learned things I never knew. And so I think
Mm.
there's this massive misconception, and I think LinkedIn unknowingly has put itself into a box,
Mm.
right? When really one of the reasons TikTok took off the way that it did is we all craved honesty,
Mhm.
right? And so someone
Mhm.
can flip open a camera or their phone and record, and we're like, "Oh, I love that."
Yeah.
Right? And then LinkedIn actually has a very, very similar opportunity. We may have to curb it a little bit, but it has a very, very similar opportunity. It's just not known.
Mm. You know, that makes sense actually, because when TikTok came out, the marketing of the TikTok platform
Yeah,
was almost more aggressive than the content itself, which was
that's
like
right.
why you should be on TikTok or how the algorithm works, or like if you're a small creator, like this is your moment. Like there
That's
was
right.
so much marketing around it. And I feel like in a way, LinkedIn has kind of always been there, but not really ever had, at least in my opinion, its moment. And I think for people like yourself, the
Yeah,
people who are in it and living within that world day to day, you know what the opportunity is, but yet you
yeah,
see so many people not leveraging it because they're
yeah,
not fully up to speed maybe on the true impact it could have on them and their business.
100%. Have you ever seen those videos where it's like unsexy products that, work really well or unsexy products that
Yes.
yes, that's LinkedIn. Is
Yeah.
the unsexy product like in the back of your, cabinet.
It's
Um,
true.
but it works, right? And you're like, damn, I forgot about that. That's LinkedIn. What I will say though, Kate, is there is a high barrier to entry. And I think that stops a
Mm,
lot of people is that
okay.
the high barrier to entry. Whereas on TikTok, yes, there was great marketing, but also it's like, ooh, I don't need, no one knows me here, right?
Mm,
If you know me in real life, no, you don't.
yeah.
And then on LinkedIn, it's like, oh, I've actually met all of you in real life. Like this is extremely uncomfortable. So the barrier to
Yeah.
entry is higher,
Mm, okay.
but it's worth it. To
Okay.
everyone listening, it's worth it.
I was like, you better go fix your LinkedIn profile after you listen to this, okay?
Yes.
Okay, so now I want to understand obviously, like everyone's brain as a business owner, and obviously yours included, I'm sure at moments, is like,
Yeah.
give me sales. Give me info on sales. Give me the 101 of what that looks like. And I
Yeah.
was just saying to Sam, guys, before we started recording, I was having a conversation with someone literally yesterday about LinkedIn. And they were like, my bone to pick with LinkedIn is I just so much spam selling. And it's
Yeah.
so frustrating. And I feel like it's so hard to make connections because there's so many people who are making fake connections that to know if someone's actually wanting to connect with you, you're never sure. Are they just trying to sell you? And then even when you think someone's connecting, they kind of end up being the person who's selling you. So, obviously, as a business, for somebody who's wanting to generate sales or leverage LinkedIn to make sales, it obviously all of us want to build connections with those in our audience, but how do we use LinkedIn as a tool, in your opinion, or maybe for yourself or the businesses that you're involved with?
Yeah.
How do you see leveraging LinkedIn as a tool for a business to generate more sales?
Okay. I love this. Gloves off. Let's dive in.
Yeah.
So, okay, there's a concept called social capital. And so, with this concept, let's think about an ATM. I can't go to the ATM that not only do I not have a bank account with, but there's no money, right? Or maybe
Mm,
I have a bank account and there's still no money. And I'm thinking, well, I'm going to pull out money. Well, no, you're not. The same goes for human connection. I cannot knock on your virtual door and ask you for something, right? Some people will
mm,
call this the law of reciprocity.
yeah.
And to an extent, it is. I am a firm believer in building social capital. And
Mm,
so there's different variations of this that you hear, right? You hear Gary Vee talk about the, give, ask.
yeah.
Alex Ramodi talks about it as well. And it's not about giving to the point that you feel that you've overextended yourself, right? Because as a business owner, we're not Gary Vee and we're not Alex Hormozy. We don't
Yeah.
have finance, right? And so those lessons, although valuable, are not typically applicable at this level,
Mm.
right? Even if you're a 7, 8, 9 figure business owner, still there's a lot of
You're
data.
still a technically, I know this sounds crazy to say, guys, but you're still even at that stage a baby business in comparison to large business. But yeah.
Exactly right. Yeah. And so social capital is something I harp on every single day. And it's something that I live by as well, right? Is I want to build social capital with someone, customer or not, client or not, before I ask anything.
Mm,
And that is a key mistake that I see people making is that they go right in for the ask. Sometimes that's ads doing that. Sometimes it's,
mm,
kind of pseudo networking where it's just immediately asking for something that's not networking. And sometimes it is using Sales Navigator, like we talked about before. You have all this great detail on this person and you jump right in a way that's going to make them say, whoa, what was that?
whoa.
Where did you
Yeah.
come from?
Yeah.
Right? Because
Yeah.
it is a virtual door. This is someone's home.
Yeah.
Yeah, building social capital is the best possible thing that you can do.
So
And
really, like, you might recommend then using Sales Navigator more from the lens of creating connections and conversations with people,
yeah,
not going in from the lens of, hey, I'm going to go slide into the DMs of equivalent of 40 people today.
that's right. Because it doesn't
Got it.
work,
Yeah. Well, I
right?
mean, it doesn't work anywhere.
Well,
Unless,
that's
also,
right.
by the way, if this is the first time you're hearing that, this is also me letting you know it doesn't work anywhere. And I think, a curiosity that I have is people, obviously, we know go from something like a TikTok to an Instagram. Do you
Yeah.
ever find for LinkedIn that you see people leaving LinkedIn to see you elsewhere?
Yes. Oh, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
for sure. And so LinkedIn has a cool feature called featured section. That's actually what it's
Mm.
called. And you can post more than three, but three are going to show up. So you could have, for example, if you have an investor deck, if you have a sales deck, a pitch deck, if you have book a call with me, if you have any sort of free download, you can put that there. You can also redirect people from there as well.
Mm. Okay.
Yeah.
So I want to, because I have some questions for some of our other scaling entrepreneurs about hiring, which I know you know all of the things
Yes.
about, which I want to pick your brain about LinkedIn.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking for the person who's listening, the blueprint, if you were going to get started, would be
Yeah.
you need to first go optimize your profile so it's not like just the high school you went to and you have no other info.
Right. Yeah.
That, please.
Yeah.
Second, obviously fixing, as you said, like the header, the photo, and those core components you spoke about.
That's right.
Starting with engaging, thoughtful things, not love this, totally resonate, and the 2-word answers.
Right.
Then maybe progressing into making content and keeping the same marketing principles that you're doing
Mhm.
elsewhere, but changing the modality of how you actually, or the medium of how you express that through the
Yeah.
platform to tailor it to its different functions.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
And that's why when you talk about marketing principles versus tactics or versus platform specific, that's, we're seeing this at play in real life right now.
Yeah.
It's the marketing principle. It's not, the Canva graphic.
Right, which I think for most people, and understandable, is frustrating because they're thinking, I have no time to work in
Right.
the business.
Right.
And now I'm having to make custom content for LinkedIn, but then also like TikTok doesn't want me reposting from anywhere, but then Instagram doesn't want me reposting from anywhere. And I will say, like, I do think this idea of like repurposing really needs to be repurposing the idea
Mhm.
or repurposing an aspect of the media, but not literally copy pasting. Cause as to your point earlier, I've seen a lot of even my peers who are like, yeah, I just wanted to get on LinkedIn. So I started putting content out. Well, come to find out, it's basically all just their TikToks copy pasted onto LinkedIn.
Right.
And so while, yes, they're on the platform, it's not necessarily doing anything for them because it's not really tailoring itself to like the language that LinkedIn wants you to speak.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And LinkedIn has so many cool features, right? Like I know I've talked a lot about commenting, but even with commenting, I have gotten into full-fledged conversations with people, genuine conversations in the
Mm,
comments, which even comments I think sometimes have a stigma to them of, oh, the
yeah.
comment section,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And sometimes it's a fun read, on a news article or something. But I mean, I've had full-blown conversations with people and then we'll take it offline and we'll go
Mm,
into LinkedIn in-mails or maybe we'll, exchange or whatever. And that's so incredibly powerful. And then, of course, that conversation is visible to my audience, their audience, anyone who likes it,
mm.
it goes to that person's audience. And so, imagine you and I having a conversation that's, we're nerding out on data or something, and then
Yeah.
boom, everyone can see it. It's like, well, there you go. That's content right there.
Right. Your comments are your content, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love it. I just have never been so excited to be able to grow a platform in my pajamas and I don't have to necessarily post new created filming content or writing content in order to have it grow. Like I feel like there's no better
Yeah.
opportunity than that. Now, on a totally different kind of pivot, we've talked obviously about your profile, your content, engagement, sales. Obviously, as you know, part of businesses is hiring. And I
Mhm.
know for myself, I've definitely leveraged LinkedIn as an opportunity for us to be able to market our business for some of the hires that we've had.
Yeah.
And a common question that I get when I'm working with scaling entrepreneurs is like, where do I find good people? Like where do I find good help?
Yeah.
And obviously with all of your background and maybe you can give people a snapshot kind of before you dive into this,
Yeah.
but I'm wondering how can we leverage LinkedIn in a way that's not as a social platform? So I'm thinking for hiring really qualified talent, do you think that it's the place that people could be looking or things they might want to consider? Because in my personal experience, we did one of our most recent actually marketing, funny enough, marketing positions on LinkedIn and we got really great applications coming in of all the people that I got pushed out to on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And I know previous to that, everyone's like, no, there's LinkedIn, but like I would do Indeed or I would do like one of those core platforms and go there. If someone's wanting to hire and considering using LinkedIn to hire or start to build out their team,
Yeah.
what do they need to consider about leveraging LinkedIn as a tool for that?
For sure. Okay. So, yeah, quick background is my corporate career was very much around hiring and headhunting. So, I worked as a headhunter for some top tech companies, some of which we've talked about today,
Hmm.
i.e., Meta, we're clients of mine. And so, my entire job was going out and finding talent during those years when I had that role. And there's so much talent, right? There's no shortage of talent. There's no shortage of people saying, hey, look what I can do for you. Give me a shot. right? And
Mhm.
as a business owner or as anyone hiring, what we need to normalize is the level of risk,
Mm.
right? That happens when someone hires. It is expensive, both from a monetary sense, from a time sense, and also that's your business that you're exposing to this person and vice versa. And so, when hiring, there's a couple different ways to go about it. You can network your way to hiring, right? You can go to someone and poach them and say, listen, I love your background. I saw your portfolio, XYZ, right? I'm the queen of poaching people. I do that a lot. That's one option. Another option is you can pay to post a role.
Mm.
Now, doing that, to get back to the algorithm, when you pay to post a role, what LinkedIn promises you is we're not just giving you qualified candidates and talent, we're also giving you people who are active, i.e., why you have to, stay
Mm.
active on the
Yes.
profile, right? So I would say when hiring, you want to think about obviously what are your immediate needs, and also what is the inherent risk of whatever specific position you're hiring for. And when you're looking at a profile, that profile needs to, at first glance, say, yes, this person can do the role. And then the
Mm.
interview itself is really about to what extent can this person do the role.
Mm. Okay. I feel like we're gonna have to have you come back for a whole other hiring episode. My brain's firing over here, and guys, she knows, so she could do a 5-hour masterclass for you at least. There's so much to unpack when it comes to the hiring side. And
Uh,
obviously, like, I know that's its own can of worms.
yeah,
Like, there's just so much to unpack there.
for sure.
But I think, you know, obviously listening to this, there's someone who maybe not posting on LinkedIn at all.
Yeah.
And they're not leveraging it maybe in any way within their marketing strategy right now. And they're listening and they're like, okay, this seems pretty approachable. It seems like it's obviously leverageable. It's got great opportunity for me.
Yeah.
If someone's kind of considering posting on it, where do they start in the sense of maybe perspective about growth? Because one of the things that I know when people are going onto social platforms is they start and they get immediately frustrated it's not growing fast enough,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And obviously, as you spoke about, there's a bunch of different ways to grow your community. But when we're wanting to grow on LinkedIn, what does that look like? Because I know obviously something like TikTok, you can have something go viral and before you know it, you've got, 20,000 followers that just added to your community.
Right.
How does community building happen on LinkedIn versus the other platforms? Because obviously you build community on all of them.
Yeah.
What have you seen as an expectation someone who's new to the platform might want to have about building community on LinkedIn?
Yeah. I would say the first mindset shift would be that people expect more of you than simply putting out content. So the idea of a quote unquote follower, it does exist on LinkedIn. You have connections and you have followers, and those are two different things, although they can be the same thing.
Okay.
We're, we're technically two different things, right?
Okay.
And so there are countless ways in which you can put out content. You can actually make posts. You can do the commenting thing like we talked about. You can create a newsletter as well that gets blasted to everyone, and that's actually done through LinkedIn. And then you can
Mm,
also write expert articles and contribute to articles, and it's actually a whole thing. And there's badges and there's gamification. So there's
cool.
all different points of entry,
Yeah.
which is more granular. So that kind of to the side, the prerequisite is that you go in and it's a two-way relationship, which also goes back to the social capital,
Yep.
right? If there's one takeaway from this, it's optimize your headline and build social capital, because
Okay.
that's really where the value is. People are not there to be your quote unquote follower.
Mm. For someone who's listening who maybe doesn't know the difference between like first connections, second connections, or anything connection versus followers, what's like the 101 of the difference for that? Like, are you looking to build a following or are you looking to build connections in your opinion on LinkedIn or both?
I would say both.
Okay.
And so the functionality of LinkedIn is that if I come across your profile and I hit connect, I have an option to send you a message, which in and of itself is great. So it's not a blind follow.
Yeah.
And you have to accept the connection. Whereas a follow you is me saying, well, I'm going to follow their content, but you don't have to actually accept it.
Mm.
Right? And so it's a little bit more passive. Whereas, yes, if I click on your profile, I say I want to make a connection. I say, hey, I've listened to your podcast. I really love it. Would love to be connected on LinkedIn, maybe chat further. I also
Mhm.
become a follower, which is kind of funny there. So first
Okay.
connection is very active. Second connection would be someone that you know that could potentially be in my realm as well, right? We have common connections.
Okay.
And then third connection is we don't know each other at all.
Okay. In my head, while I know it's not the same, I'm thinking of it as like first, second, and third cousins. You barely know your third cousins. Very estranged, don't have a great relationship, and then you've got your first cousins and second cousins. Like that's I'm
Yeah.
obviously seeing it as the level of proximity to you is the
Yes.
level of connection, closeness. And the
Yeah.
following thing I think is actually interesting because I find this is actually a parallel on TikTok. I am shocked still to this day of how many people's content I consume who I don't follow.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
like, I'm thinking for LinkedIn, how many people might follow your content, but not actually be connected to you? Like,
That's
I
right.
think it's very typical of a lot of platforms that if you have access to the content, then like that's kind of the main thing you might be there for.
Yeah.
Do you encourage people to invite people to connect, or are you okay keeping them in the follower bucket?
I think typically people go for connection
Okay.
and then it subsequently, the way that the platform works, it subsequently puts you as a follower. So you would
Mm,
have to actively seek out a different path to solely follow someone, which most people don't do.
okay. Okay. So it's going to mainly dominantly be connections that way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now,
So it's your best friend, it's your friend of a friend, and then the person that you don't know.
okay.
Yeah.
Something that is sitting in the back of my head today that I was like, I have to ask is curation because everyone and their mom wants to know what is the etiquette? Like, we've got TikTok where you are potentially like in bed with pimple patches on recording a video and you don't care at all about it. And I
Mhm.
love that for them. On
Yeah.
the flip side, you've also got Instagram, which can be a little bit of both. You can have very unfiltered content, raw, don't really care about the curation of how it presents. And obviously, you have some people brand wise who are very curated.
Mhm.
Does curation have a place on LinkedIn when it comes to media and imagery? Maybe obviously the message you want to make sure lands, but when it comes to the media of LinkedIn, do you feel it needs to be curated?
No.
Okay.
No, I don't, but I wouldn't say anything overly polarizing. I wouldn't use profanity. But I wouldn't do that on Instagram either.
Okay.
So it just depends on what someone's personal brand is and like how they like to communicate. But that kind of stuff is going to get flagged and taken down.
Mm, okay.
So that's just something to consider. Not that there's anything wrong with that, right? But sometimes, on TikTok, for example, it's like it's just a filter, it's just a stream of consciousness.
Mm,
But people really want to understand. So something I love doing is I'll post about a podcast and I'll debrief a podcast that I really like.
mm,
And I notice other people do that as well, which is where I learned to do it.
mm.
And that's a great way to connect and have some level of curation because it's actually someone else's brand that you're dipping into and then sharing your unique perspective on it.
So it's almost in a way, as you say that, like that kind of is like the trend bucket on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Like the trend is really seeing what you're finding other people in your industry are posting that's performing well and then duplicating that style of content in your own way.
Yeah, exactly. And it's very much about it's not education in the sense of here are 4 steps to do X.
Mm,
It's education in the sense of this was a major takeaway for me and I want to share it with you.
got it.
Maybe you have a different takeaway, maybe you have the same takeaway,
Mm,
which
okay.
I personally like, much better and it builds authority but in a more authentic way.
Okay. There's so much. There's
There's so
so
much.
much. There's
There's
so
so much.
much. Okay, I know obviously you have because like guys, if you Sam is on TikTok, she's on Instagram, she's obviously on LinkedIn. Like she's literally everywhere. She's got a podcast
Yeah.
of her own.
Yeah.
If someone is wanting to kind of obviously when we listen to a podcast, it's a lot of conversation, a lot of different tips. If someone wants to have
Yeah.
these tips kind of consolidated, I know you have like free resources that you
Yeah.
have available for people to download. Where
Mhm.
can they find those if they want to kind of sink their teeth into learning more about the tactical part of LinkedIn?
Yeah, for sure. So I broke everything down into a really easy to use guide that goes top to bottom of your LinkedIn to make it super, super easy so you can implement right away. And yeah, you can find that guide on any of my profiles.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Honestly, my style, I just like slide right into people's DMs. I'm like, I need that free resource. So if you guys do
Yeah,
want, if you
yeah.
guys do,
Right.
I'm like, hey, do you have the PDF?
That
If you
too.
guys are also wanting that summary of the LinkedIn guide, I've seen it. It's epic. I would just message her like a word LinkedIn or something along that
Yeah.
line. Let her know you came from the podcast. But
Yeah.
I know this resource popped off on TikTok and so many people were just absolutely obsessed. It's been downloaded a lot, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's been downloaded over like 21,000 times at this point.
So, I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
needless to say, it's valuable information,
Yeah.
which is why I was so excited to have her on today.
Fair.
Obviously, we'll definitely have to have you come back because as you guys know, she has a incredible background around hiring and what to look for, how to interview, all of the things that you're going to want
Much.
to obviously know if you're scaling your business. But today was so good, covered so much on all things LinkedIn. If someone wants to connect with you, where's the best place for them to reach out and to find more?
Yeah, for sure. So as we talked about, I'm on all the platforms for sure.
She is everywhere. She is.
Um, yeah, and I guess we'll have to drop the usernames because there are actually 3
Yeah.
different usernames. But I'm on all 3 and I'd love to connect on all 3.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to end with one question, which has nothing to do with LinkedIn.
Okay.
I just had a little curveball and I have not prepped Sam for this at all. So, if you were going to give someone listening to this who's very ambitious and driven advice on anything that you've learned in your journey of scaling your businesses, I'm curious what that would be. And the reason that I ask is I think that you who are listening obviously listen to this because you're pushing hard in your business and you're working at a lot of things right now and you know your potential and really want to tap into that. And one of the things that I have found in my journey is like there's what you know, but there's also learning from other people who've already done it.
Yeah.
And for me, obviously I know all of your success and all the things that you've built. And that, at least from my perspective, comes with a lot of built-in lessons that get baked in.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if you want to take a minute, that's okay. But
Yeah.
I'm wondering if you were going to give advice to the woman listening to this about her scaling her business and growing her business in whatever season she might be in of that right now,
Yeah.
is there anything that you'd say has been your biggest lesson or your advice to her that you would want to pass along?
Oh, wow. What an amazing question. I'm like, my brain, if I were a cartoon, would have all these thought bubbles,
And
popping up.
if you've got like 4, I'll take 4. But like obviously if there's one big one, that would be amazing.
Yeah, yeah, so there's so many. Listen, I would say the number one thing is to not be afraid to network at every stage. So whether you're thinking about starting a business, you have started a business, you've sold a business, you're in the thick of it with a business, we with social media have become so either I'm putting out content and you're viewing it,
Mhm.
or I'm watching your content. And that's just the world that we live in right now. That's just how it is. And people are much more receptive than you think. And if I could talk to my younger self, I would say people are much more receptive than you think they're going to
Mm,
be. And
yeah.
they feel value from you, even in those moments where maybe you don't think that they do. And so if it's a business owner who's 10 steps ahead of you, 1 step ahead of you, 100 steps ahead of you, network and have genuine conversations versus just absorbing without context. Because networking has given me context that nothing else, no book. I mean, and I've read many books, but like studying business in school, reading the books, the podcasts, there's no
Mm.
context.
I feel like network has been the basis of basically my entire career, if I'm gonna be honest.
Yeah.
Like, there's just so many doors that were opened only because of who I knew.
Yeah.
There was supports that I had only because I asked, in the
Yeah.
sense of, like, had the conversation with the person at the event, got in rooms where I was really uncomfortable, and I was like, "I have no place being here," and I'm like, "Okay, let's just chat with people and see and find common ground."
Yeah.
But I also think I love that because I think that also regardless of stage in business, I think there's, like, a deep desire for connection.
Yes.
And, like, just in general. And
Yeah.
it was interesting. I was talking to somebody yesterday and they said, "Oh, I saw these 2 people out together." And I was like, "That's amazing." And she's like, "Yeah, but one person is, like, barely a six-figure earner and the other one's, like, a multiple seven-figure earner." I was just shocked. And I was like, "Why
Mm.
is that shocking?"
Yeah.
And it was interesting because she didn't think that there'd be any reason these 2 people would connect. I'm like, "But people just want connection. They don't care about
Yeah.
your stage. They don't care about the size of your business. They don't care about all of these things."
No.
I also have found, and I'm sure you've seen this too, like people who are also very advanced in business, being around someone who's not as advanced, they actually love to share
Wow.
what they've learned. So
Yeah.
like if someone reaches out to me or someone reaches out to you and they're like, "Hey, like I am just at the brand new beginning stage. Is there any advice you give to me?"
Yeah.
I feel like it fills my bucket more to give advice than it does to ask it from somebody.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And you'd be surprised how many people sometimes who are more advanced than you in a certain way actually want to learn from you. And so I think
True.
there's this notion that networking is very binary, right? I have a network, I don't have a network, right?
Mm,
But actually, it's an everyday thing that you're building. And
mm,
I used to be that person who thought, well, I don't have a network. So
mm.
how can I? Because I don't have it. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like the gym, right? You go every day and you
Yeah.
build it.
Yeah.
And you'd be surprised how deep of relationships you can build in a really short amount of time.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
It's
I
it's
have
powerful.
met people who within a month became so integrated in my life or business or whatever it might be
Mhm.
just because you walked up and had a conversation with them. And I think that, obviously LinkedIn is one of the tools you can use to do that, to be able to like go and to network with people and to connect with people. But the
Yeah.
thing that I think is like, if you've listened to any episode on anyone's podcast about social media, the number one thing you cannot get away from is the fact that like the basis of the revenue that you want is based off the relationships you have with your audience, with your peers, with your clients. Like it does not matter. And so I think that aspect of like connection and relationships just keeps coming back as this like common theme that everyone's like, but there's got to be another way to like mass create relationships. And like you're saying, like the thing that impacted you was networking. Like it really
Yeah.
was focusing on relationships at the forefront of what you do.
Yeah. Yeah, because
Yeah.
you can learn, you can meet other people, you can, of course, make revenue, make sales, be introduced to people, but all of that happens through social capital.
Yeah.
Love it.
There you have it, you guys. There you
Yeah,
have it. All
yeah,
right, Sam. Well, thank you so much for today. It was so good. And I feel like I got a masterclass in LinkedIn. So I feel like I have all of the notes on everything that work for LinkedIn today. And I think the important thing, guys, is to make sure that you tune into Sam's content. Sam, also very exciting in the next year, is going to have some big developments happening there that I would just say, as someone who knows the behind the curtain of things, I would stay tuned to if I was you. And with all of that being said, we will see you guys next week. And as always, you guys stay ambitious.